There are no grades or college degrees given for parenting well. Often described as the most important job in the world, we know little of what it takes to support, discipline, guide, and love our children unconditionally. Yet there are proven tools and behaviors to help you raise emotionally intelligent and happy children. Next on Living Smart. Hello, I'm Patricia GRAS. Welcome to Living Smart, the show designed to help you get the most out of life. Lupe Casares comes from a third-generation migrant farm family. He grew up in poverty, yet his family of 10 gave him the greatest gift, unconditional love and a thirst for learning and hard work. When he almost flunked out of school, his parents stood by him and believed he could overcome whatever obstacle faced him. Today, the first to go to college in his family, he's working on a doctorate in education. An educator and filmmaker, he has dedicated his life to empowering students and parents through an award-winning TV series, Padres con Poder, Parents with Power. Today, we discuss how to empower families. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Lupe, you know how hard it is for parents to parent well today in today's society. Why is it so difficult?
Basically, I think one of the first factors is that most parents do not understand the emotional needs the children have, and the second step would be how to fulfill them. And so when you don't do that to children, naturally, as human beings, they will go out into the streets and try to get them fulfilled from some other source.
Else. Okay.
And then you have gangs, and you have teen pregnancy, and you have a lot of the other issues.
Problems. You had to face that when growing up, gangs and lack of expectations and difficulty with making friends and all the issues that kids tend to have. What saved you?
Well, you know, the uniqueness about our families you mentioned in the introduction is I'm a third-generation migrant farm worker. I was literally born in the back of an old pickup going from one harvest to the other. So our family was always, you know, we lacked everything else except support, family support. That was always there. Mom was always there. Dad was always there. We always worked together. And therefore, you know, I had that very strong foundation in my life. So, you know, and that's what I tell parents. You know, a parent was worried because, you know, next year my son is going to go off to college or is going to go to this bad school with a bad reputation. I said, if you take care of the foundation, fulfilling it doesn't matter where that person goes or who he faces, who he hangs out with.
When you think of foundation, what do you mean, though, by foundation? The
Strong
stability
foundation,
of being there?
Yeah, exactly. You know, every child has the need to be needed, that home, that the parents need him, that there's a place, no matter what your age is, that there's a place for you in that home. That's, you know,
safe, that you're safe there.
That you're safe and that you're needed, that you play a role within that structure.
Structure.
Exactly.
Very important structure. I hear that's extremely important.
And see, what you don't
is
you fit right into the gang, because then they'll offer you the same opportunity.
The wrong kind of structure, but it's structure nevertheless.
The wrong kind of structure, but structure.
What is the biggest mistakes parents make today?
Use tradition. In other words, follow tradition. That's the way they were raised. And
even if it was bad, it's tradition, so we're going to do it this way.
Exactly. You know, and parents will actually come to you and say, I have been telling this child for the last 3 years not to do this, and kids don't do it. If you have been doing and saying that for 3 years, don't you think it's time to change what you're saying?
That's insanity, right?
Right, but we follow this vicious cycle, intergenerational cycle.
Right. So it was done that way, and it doesn't work, but you're not going to change. So basically, to me, that says that there's a lack of consciousness about how you should do it right. You're just doing it because that's how you learn to do it. But
yeah, so first of all, children are not born with instructions, as people have said so many times before, and parents don't have, you know, a test to pass like you do when you're going to get a driver's license. You actually have to know the signs of how to drive. Well, parents don't need that. You know, it's just people become parents all of a sudden through accidents or through planning. Nevertheless, there's no instructions. They say that a elevator operator gets more instructions than a parent. So.
Yeah, it's true. Role of media today. A lot of parents complain, well, I try to teach my kids values and I try to discipline my children, but they watch TV or they watch the movies and there's no values, and so they blame it on the media. How important is the media in impacting
Like everything else
parenting?
out there, you know, like everything else. I heard one person say, you know, ever since they removed prayer from the school, things have gone down the drain. What can stop you from praying at home before the child comes to school? So the same thing goes for media. You know, if you have that strong communication, strong structure, you know, media and everything else will not come and invade you, you know, will not come and take your place.
It's up to you. You're the head of the hen. You're
You
in
know,
charge as a
yeah,
parent.
that's why parenting is one of the most difficult, as you mentioned at the introduction, one of the most difficult professions, you know.
We could call it a profession.
It is, it is.
We should go to school for it.
We,
You talked about structure and also parents using whatever their parents or their grandparents used to be parents. But tradition, what role does tradition play in all this?
well, for instance, I had a conversation with people, a family 2-3 weeks ago in the Rio Grande Valley while I was there visiting. And, you know, the father, in a very prompt manner, told me, you know what I gave my son for his 21st birthday? And I have no idea. You know, the bed of a pickup, I filled it with beer, $600 worth of beer. You know, and everybody that I looked around, nobody was shocked. Everybody was, way to go. You know, so
Family tradition, beer
well,
in the truck.
It's not only just family tradition, it's culture tradition. You know, so we have to take a critical perspective, a critical look at what we do, how we do it, and why. And that's the million-dollar question for parents. Do you know why you're doing what you're doing? And when you pose that question, most parents who are honest will say, you know what, I don't. I don't have a clue where this is leading or why I'm doing. The practice of telling children to, you know, it's my house or the highway or whatever the term is, you know, it's going to be my rules.
My way or the highway.
Or the highway. You know, has it worked? Is there any studies that indicate that you know, that decision, that option has worked for anybody? No, nobody has even asked, has it worked? But it's being practiced in a lot of homes. Why? It sounds good.
Okay.
It has
That's
this,
the way it's been done, it sounds like.
and it has this ring about making me look tough.
Right, right. Well, tell me what works. Let's talk about what works. For example, let's start with communication. I know it's difficult to communicate with teenagers, for example. What are some of the conversation pieces that you can use to start a conversation with a young person or with your child?
It's not so much, Patty, it's not so much the actual wording or the phrases that you use. It's the kind of relationship that you start to build with that child. You know, it's not what I say as much as what I do. You know, and so if you want to be proper and you have a manual, you say, I think I should say this, make the statements. The child sees that at night you come in. I mean, I had a person who came to me, wanted to really work on that child, and one day she came late to my session, and and I could smell alcohol all over her, and she said, today I want to know how to make my son get up on time to go to school. And says, we never, you know, could he ask you last night at 3 o'clock when you came in drunk? You see what I mean? And so one thing doesn't jive with the other. It's not congruent that you make a statement and you don't keep your actions intact.
Yeah, your actions intact, or you're not in integrity.
So, you know, people will say, well, he doesn't listen to me. He doesn't listen to me. Well, something went wrong way back. It wasn't what you said. You know, it's the kind of bonding relationship that you start to build with the child since day one.
If you've made a mistake, let's say your kid's a teenager,
We do
and it's
all
too
make
late.
mistakes.
Yeah, we all do make mistakes. But if let's say you're a parent and your kid's a teenager and you made that mistake and you don't know what's going on, you just cannot penetrate. You cannot get in there and communicate with your child.
You can't pinpoint
What's
it.
the first thing you do as a parent?
Admit
What
it.
do you suggest?
Admit it.
So you suggest if they admit vulnerability, I did something wrong, my child, I'm sorry.
Yes.
So first thing
And
is
that
ask for
the-
forgiveness of
and
a
that-
child?
Well, first of all, yeah, that's also you know, possible, and it's also a good thing to do. But when you go and ask for forgiveness, you should have a plan already. It's not just forgive me. No, it's what am I going to do next?
Right.
Exactly. But that is one of the most difficult things that stands in the way of some parents. They cannot bring themselves to say, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I am doing something wrong. And because, you know, when you do that, then parents, because of lack of information, they suspect that if they admit that they did something wrong, that they will lose the respect.
But they've already lost
and it's
the
totally
respect.
the opposite.
They already lost their respect.
It's totally the opposite.
Right.
I'm a human being. I made a mistake. And the child will now understand that you're a human being. So that, you know, admitting, and then the next phase is to look at the problem from the root. What is the root of this problem? We tend not to do that, because when you do that, it may point at you instead of the child being the problem.
Okay. Well, give me an example of that, for example. You've helped so many
A
families.
lady asked me once, I was one of the shows, and she was following me, calling me, finally got my cell. I don't know how she got it, but anyway, she asked, you know, my son is in juvenile. He's been there 6 months. He's getting out next week. Do you think he's going to come out a changed person? And I said, well, lady, I don't know him from Adam, but let me ask you, have you changed? And she said, well, I'm not exactly the one causing the problem. I said, are we sure about that? And I said, what if for a miracle of God, by a miracle of God, that child changed, and he comes back to your home, and the problem's still there, rooted, embedded there in your home? It will take him a day or two before he goes back to his old ways, because you have not gone to the root of the problem.
Okay. And can you give me an example of what most problems out there, like what are the most prolific problems in families today, besides communication?
Yeah, well, it's, you know, it's always sticking to all myth and following tradition. I made a movie special about that, because I produced a movie special about that, The Brilliant Lawyer, specifically about that. It's about this young man growing up and doing his best to get his father's approval. And every time the father would find something wrong, eventually goes to law. I mean, he's the one that graduates from both sides of the family, ends up in law school, comes back home a successful attorney. Still the father doesn't, you know, doesn't show acknowledge him. And one day they just break communication. He says, you know, I will never fulfill, you know, whatever role you want me to be. Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I should have been a drunk and alcoholic. Then you would be happy. Well, you know, they didn't speak for 9 years, based on a true story. They didn't speak for 9 years. One day they notify him that his dad is dead, that he died. He's at the funeral home. He flies in, goes to the funeral home, finds an old friend of his father, and this old friend says, your daddy used to love you. He loves you so much. He went crazy, went looking for a diary where this man wrote all these beautiful, wonderful things. And at the end he said, son, I don't know what took over me, but I could never bring myself to acknowledge you, but know that I love you, and I die loving you. So that shows, you know, I've had parents, Petty, I've had parents talk to me, you know, after a meeting, and they're both talking to me, and they'll say, you know, we're very proud of him. He makes good grades. And then the child comes close to us and says, be quiet, don't let him hear us.
Why is that? That doesn't make sense. But why? But I've seen that happen a lot. But why?
It is.
Is it arrogance? Is it ignorance? What is it?
No, it's more than that. It's, you know, especially people that were raised in a very difficult environment, economic environment, suppressed and exploitation, and all those things contribute to that. I want to make you tough, because it's a tough world
because
out
it's
there.
a tough world
and
out
if
there.
I show you any weakness, God forbid, you're not going to survive.
And the funny thing is, being vulnerable is being strong, because it's admitting you're a human and you make mistakes. How do you know if someone has the will as a parent to help their children succeed?
The love. The love is the foundation, you know, and that is the strength, that is the source that will make a parent admit to fault, look into the problem, the root cause of the problem, auto-analyze actions. Only love has that power to change a person. So we all have that potential, most parents. I haven't met a parent that doesn't love a child. They may not show it, they may be totally different on a different page, but the love is always there, and that is the power that can change things. It can change the parent, it can change the outcome. And you go to extremes. We have all kinds of examples of parents that had gone, you know, beyond the call of duty to save a child, and it's based on love.
And usually it's never an issue of not loving your child. It's usually the problem is not knowing
How are
what
you-
to do and how to
How are
do
you
it.
showing that love, and where is that energy goes? There's the opposite way. There's the other parent who I call it the dying parent. This is the parent that will give everything to the child and show weakness and be crying and saying, you know, I'm dying. Can you not see that I'm dying? That doesn't work.
Well, that's manipulation.
It's manipulation, and then the interpretation of that child is that you're the one that's supposed to be the rock of my foundation, and look at you, you're all weak and you're crying.
So it sounds like you have to be in that balance. Now, we've talked about how important, because you are a storyteller, how storytelling helps you bond with your children. How does that coincide?
Absolutely. You know, you're talking, you ask 2 or 3 times in different ways, communication. And it's one thing to sit the child, like in a lot of movies, sit down, I want to tell you how much I love you. It's another way to say, you know, use a story, a concept of a story to say that. For instance, there's a lot of parents that have, this child has no conception of how much I suffered to get here, for instance, to America. How I used to be so poor and he doesn't appreciate anything. Okay, my mother, for instance, was born and raised in a little town called Gualahuises, Nuevo León. I know that town from one end to the other. I know where the plaza is, where the river is, who lives where. I've never been in that town. But through storytelling, she has made this town alive. And in doing so, she has put herself and given me her life, what it was to be raised, you know, as a campesina, without a father, and all those things, without emphasizing anything, just a story.
Yeah.
So
that really works.
That, you know, my mom, you know, and I are one, because, you know, she has brought us closer and closer together. And I'm talking about the other 8 children. I'm not the only one, you know, through storytelling.
Now, what does parental involvement mean to you? What does it mean to be involved?
The most misused word. Parental involvement means, and I know a lot of parents are going to say you're crazy, but it's 24/7 monitoring. You know, by the time a person cries wolf, you know, the writing has been on the wall for a while, and you're not going to fool me. I've had parents call me crying. They just caught him yesterday with some drugs, and I didn't know he had not been going to school for 3 months. Okay, there's something very wrong here. You're ignoring the signs on the wall, and you refuse to acknowledge that, or you must have been on another planet.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But that doesn't. So to answer your question, is that monitoring, and how you do it, how you monitor without, you know, carrying a rifle or a gun.
Right. Right. I mean, really, you can be connected, and especially today with technology, I see a lot more connection.
No excuse.
Yeah,
you
there's
know,
no excuse
we're going through
for
economic,
not being involved.
No, we're going through economic issues and very heavy now. And parents now have to I know parents have 3 jobs. 3 jobs.
Yes.
But it is not the time, you know, and here we go again. What did we have to do when we were living in caves in order to survive and take care of our children? Okay, times now have evolved. We're now in a technology era. You know, kids have a lot more diversity than we used to have. Okay, but how do we adjust to survive and to keep parenting alive? There has to be a way, and that's where love comes in, innovation comes in, to make that 1 hour, you know, be as effective if you were with that child.
Well, they used to say it's an issue of quantity versus quality, but I do believe that quantity is still important. If, you know, you can't have quality time if it's half an hour a day. I mean, this is your child. When they're growing up, obviously when they're adults, that changes, but that's an excuse, I think. But anyway, you know, being from a different culture as you are here in America, can culture play a negative role in parenting?
Yes.
Tell me
Obviously.
how. Tell me how.
Well, you know, some people that are raised, you know, I've had sessions where people say, well, that's the way we do things in Michoacán, you know, and some others says in Tamaulipas, you know, and that's the role of the man is, you know, have all these things being examined, you know. And one time I was accused of being anti-Mexican. Are you against the Mexican culture? No, I'm against what's destructive, you know. And if anything, is impacting my children in a negative way, let's get rid of it. Let's examine it. I don't care if it comes from Michoacán or from wherever it comes from, Acapulco, or from the Mayas or from the Incas. I don't care. Look at it today. Look at it from a critical perspective, analyze it, and kick it out if it's not bringing any benefit to your family.
Is it effective?
Whatever culture it may be.
Right.
We have culture. We have, I was accused one time of not being a Casares, which is my last name, Casares, because I wasn't drinking. I decided not to drink for 7 years. Well, some of my brothers thought that was wrong. I was betraying the Casares name.
By not drinking. Well, but this happened. This is reality.
So it's culture. Culture is not all good.
Right. It varies.
And in every country, in every nationality,
yeah,
there's something
there's good and bad.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some parenting themes, and so because you coach parents all the time, responsibility. Who needs to instill responsibility and how? Well,
let me give you an example of how sometimes is when a child is sent to court for truancy. Some, not everybody, but a percentage of parents will always come to me and say, "Why am I being asked to come to this parenting class? It's not me. It's the child that was late." Okay. They do not see the correlation between that responsibility. I mean, I can't drag her to school, and they'll make an argument, and it almost sounds convincing. Wow, you're right. But then you remember, who's the parent here? Yeah. And when was this child born? And what did you instill in the child? And has this been the only time and the only time that this child has not complied with the responsibility? Or is it other thing? You will find that there's not just being late at school. There's a whole lot of other things that that child is doing. Issues that
affect that, right?
Yeah.
Critical thinking.
Well, my favorite scientist always said that critical thinking, when you look at a problem from a critical perspective, and you thoroughly analyze it. And that's what I recommend to parents. You look at a problem, thoroughly analyze it, no matter who gets hurt. And Einstein says, when you do that, half of the problem is already solved.
That's a very good point. Family structure, we talked a little bit about that.
Structure, and that doesn't necessarily have to be a man and a woman. It could be a man and a man and a woman and a woman. It doesn't matter. It's just what kind of laws do you instill there, and how are they followed? Because let me give you an example. I was asked one time, I married this man, I already had a little boy. His way of disciplining my child, I understand that I wanted my little boy to have a father figure. This is very common. So I brought in this guy, and the way he would punish my child was to make him stay in a room for 2 or 3 hours. Do you think that's a good way to punish a child? And I said, I'm not going to tell you how to discipline your child or not. I'm not going to tell you corporal punishment is good or not good. That's not for me to say. My only question to you is, after that child is out of that room, does this man take him fishing? Does he also enjoy some good times with him? Does he also show him love?
Right.
So there has to be a balance.
Exactly, balance, yeah, between discipline and also
a child has to understand that punishment comes because of the love that you have for that child.
Okay. What about communication?
Communication is also a misused word. Communication, there's no need really sometimes to say nothing to communicate with another person. I take this from my mother. A lot of people have the custom of screaming at people when they're angry. With my mom, I have never heard her scream. She's 85 years old, never heard her scream. All she has to do is look at you
in the eyes. That's my mother.
And that's all.
That's enough.
Okay. But communication expands beyond words. It's what am I communicating with you with my body and all of my life and all the things
and your
that
actions.
I do.
What are the 3 most important things that you would like people to remember about parenting?
The fact that children need their emotional needs fulfilled. Okay. The fact that it's all right to admit guilt. And to
be vulnerable.
To look yourself in the mirror and say, what am I doing wrong? And what do I need to do to improve this whatever it is, whatever it may be. Okay. And the third would be that we must become activists. We must advocate for our children. There's so many things going on wrong right now that we're not even aware. There's school policies that are destructive right now. School policies. I mean, education right now is in trouble. You know, you send your child to school hoping that he's going to get an education, come back and live a better life. He may end up with a ticket and in court and may end up in prison.
Yeah,
one in 3 Afro-Americans are ending up in prison. 1 in 6 Latinos are ending up in prison. So, you know, you have to become an advocate for your child. Your love and his is the one that is not involved in money.
Yeah. How do you know you're living smart?
Living by a balance in your life. What do you use as a balance? You know, are you doing too much of this or too much of that, or not enough of this and not of that? That balance, that wheel, is so important. So it gets a lot of people in trouble. You know, there's a lot of, with all due respect, people, pastors, for instance, whose children are out in drugs and too much religion, not enough
Exactly.
this.
Well, thank you so much for joining
Appreciate
us, Lupe. Thank you for the work that you do. And to learn more about parenting, go to our website. There you'll find a complete resource list. You can also email us or call us with your comments at 713-743-8513. And that's our show for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Remember to live smart. I'm Patricia Gras. Have a peaceful week. Thank you.
For a transcript of this program, send $6.95 to the address on your screen. Please include the name of the guest.